came in. Ah. You'll probably notice that you came in muted. We are going to ask that everybody go ahead and stay muted. I'm Amelia Scott. I'm the marketing specialist here at WSB. This is going to be an exciting webinar about employment for the blind. We have a great lineup of people to talk about it, and we're going to try to stick to about a 30-minute timeline. So if you do have questions, I do ask that you go ahead and stick those in the chat. At the end, we will have a short Q&A period. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. Anything we don't get to, rest assured, we'll follow up on. And if you do have to leave before this webinar is over, just know that you will get a recording of it. So just to briefly begin, before I hand it over to our amazing speakers, today we're going to have Madison Wingfield and Catherine Upshaw kind of leading this panel. They're our workforce engagement specialists here at WSB. And then we also have two blind or low vision professionals who have experience kind of navigating the workforce. So we have Robert Helms and Brian Upshaw. So they're going to be able to share some good insight, some firsthand insight on what it's like to navigate the job market. So a lot of the questions that you guys put in when you registered, they'll be able to answer throughout the webinar. So very exciting to have everybody. Thank you very much again. A very brief outline before I hand it over of how this webinar will be structured is we'll begin with a welcome. We're going to frame our challenge. So we're all probably here to learn kind of a similar thing, how to navigate the barriers to employment. And then we'll discuss the context, just kind of understanding those barriers a little bit more. And then the main portion of the webinar will be the panel. And that's where we'll really get to address some of those questions that you guys had. To wrap up the webinar, we'll just kind of discuss some strategies to overcome employment barriers, not only for employees, but also for employers. And then after we wrap up that portion of the webinar, we'll definitely discuss our mentorship program, which Maddie and Catherine have been working on, which will be a big part of discussing, how to find careers, finding a mentor. So that'll be a big part of this webinar. Also something that if you're interested in reaching out about, we can definitely get you more information. So I'm going to hand this over to our speakers. Once again, please stay muted so that we can give our speakers the full 30 minutes to talk. And then at the end, we'll address all the questions in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and be muted and hand it over. Thank you guys again. And we'll begin our webinar.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so happy we're getting to have this conversation together. I know this is a really big topic, especially right now. The job market's sad for everybody, but I know we know better than everybody else, it's always been sad for us. Over 70% of the blind and visually impaired are unemployed. And that has nothing to do with the lack of ability and everything to do with the lack of accessibility, awareness, and all those wonderful barriers we get to encounter every single day. And so we're going to focus a lot on using some of our panelists here and their experiences with navigating some of those experiences with the lack of accessible hiring practices, knowledge of resources, and just the systematic assumptions that we get in the blind and visually impaired community. And so that will be we'll get into it.
Okay, well, hi everybody, I'm Maddie. I am a teammate with Catherine here, as we are the workforce engagement specialists, like Amelia said already. So I'm going to introduce our panelists here. We have Rob Helms, and Rob, I'm going to start with you. Can you just give us a little bit of background information on who you are, your story, and what you do currently?
Okay, my name's Robert Helms, and I'm from Gillum, Arkansas originally. I was in North Carolina when I lost my eyesight back in 2003 due to a traumatic gunshot. And from 2003 up until 2022, I was one of the blind individuals that just gave up on life until I made it to WSB, and that's when I made my journey forward. And since I've completed my time with WSB, I have become a certified peer support specialist for the state of Arkansas. And I am the only peer support specialist that is blind or visually impaired in Arkansas. I pass with that.
That is so awesome, Rob. We're so proud of you.
Thank
I've got
Couldn't
to
have
go.
done without you, Lindsay.
Well, Rob and I have worked together for I think since I've
Years.
been here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years. So thank you so much, Rob. All right, and then we have Brian Upshaw. Can you do the same? Just give us a background on you and what you do currently.
Sure, yeah. My name is Brian Upshaw. I grew up in Mississippi, kind of all over the place. I came up to World Services back in 2013, first as a client. I ended up working here for about 5 years, kind of modernizing some of the IT projects that go on here. And I've since moved on to work in doing cybersecurity in the public sector. And still kind of enjoying that and staying involved, kind of helping out around World Services where I can. So just trying to be a part of the community.
That's awesome. Okay, so can y'all tell me about, or just tell us about like how you got your job and what maybe barriers did you experience as you were acquiring that?
You seem to have an answer. Go ahead, kick it off.
I'm thinking of, I know for me, I was at the end of my time here at WSB, and unfortunately, part of it is you got to have somewhere to go.
Mhm.
You got to have a job to go to and whatever. And I found an internship at a place. No, let me back up. Let me back up. Can I tell the story? I don't have time to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to make this
Short and sweet.
real quick.
You're good.
Madison was my employment prep teacher, and it was time for me to find a job for when I left WSB. And I am an animal person. I'm a horse trainer of cattle, raised cattle. That was what I'd done before I lost my eyesight. So I was filling out these applications. I was looking at vet clinics anywhere, and I was filling out. Remember?
Yeah.
I was filling out applications to clean out kennels, dog kennels. And she was like, no, Rob, I'm not gonna, you're better than that. I'm not gonna let you do it. And she knew I had a substance use background. So she got me pointed in the right direction with peer support. And I landed an internship at World Service for the Blind. And I did a 6-month internship there. And I got hired from that point forward.
Yeah, where Wolf Street Foundation. And
I'm
where-
sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yes. And so, did you experience like in that process? Did you experience any barriers? And if so, what were they, and how'd you overcome them?
First, the biggest barrier, and I'm sure a lot of people on the web can relate with this, is I had to educate them that blindness, visual impairment is not contagious. I'm not going to hurt you by working in the same area as you. And then another is when I first went for my internship, my supervisor, and it's the present supervisor I had now, was absolutely against letting somebody blind and visually impaired come in there and go to work because he had no concept of how it would work. And then the director of Wall Street Foundation said, look, let's find out what he can do, not what he can't do. And then from that point forward,
Yeah.
it's been a journey.
Ryan, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I've been pretty fortunate in that people always talk about how finding employment's about networking, and I talk a lot. So networking's kind of been a pretty a skill that I've developed pretty highly over the years. And so most of the places that I was applying for or that I was trying to get involved with, trying to find some employment with, were usually places where I knew someone, and so at least in terms of getting a foot in the door and being able to talk to people, like that wasn't so much a challenging part. However, I think some of the challenges may come for a lot of people during the interview process. And even though I might have known somebody here or there, we all kind of still go through that same interview process at the end of the day. So.
Okay. Yeah. So with you were talking about, did you specifically find any or have any barriers for your perspective that in that hiring process or even just job searching in general? I know you kind of hit a little bit on that, but do you have anything else to add related to like barriers and how you overcome those?
In terms of barriers, like for the actual job search itself, I wouldn't say that there's a whole lot more job, barriers there than there is for any other individual until you get down to, like I said, the interview process. And I think the biggest thing that I would kind of just advise people on that part and kind of overcoming that is just, Rob, you hinted this a moment ago, is just to kind of make people a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at ease. When you walk into a room and whether you've got a cane with you or a dog, or maybe you don't have any sort of mobility aid whatsoever, there may be some questions circling in the back of the interviewer's mind of, well, I'm not sure how I would do the type of job in this person's shoes, so I don't know how they can either.
Yeah.
And so, when you walk into that room, a good interview is going to sit across from you and try and get a conversation going. But as a good interviewee, you can also accelerate that process as well. And by saying, I'm going to make this a conversation. This is not going to be a Q&A session. We're going to have a conversation like two human beings or a panel of human beings and go from there. Has that been your experience, Rob? I mean, from what you
Yeah, for the most part,
Yeah.
I
That's
totally agree with that.
yeah, that's good because I know some people were asking, about that, how to disclose or when to disclose your disability and things like that. So I think you did a really good job of explaining that. I know there's been other barriers. Catherine, are there other barriers that have been listed or that you have seen that blind and visually impaired have faced or just?
Yeah, I think really the root cause is just that lack of education. And we don't educate people when we're inside our rooms every single day. So really going out into your community and making space for yourself is going to be, I think, your biggest asset to overcome any barrier that you come across. The more you talk to people, the more you show them what you can physically do, that's one less person that's questioning you going forward.
Well, you have to be confident when you walk into that room. I know people have a lot of interview anxiety.
Yeah.
You have to be confident in not just your skills and abilities, but just as yourself as a whole. And a lot of that comes through, like, you're like, well, I'm a confident person, but I get nervous during interviews. Honestly, I think one of the biggest things that people can kind of do is just get good at talking to people. Chat with you as a society. We kind of tend to be a little isolated. We kind of live in our own little bubbles a lot. Talk to the cashier when you go somewhere, talk to your bus driver, say hi, just get the habit of, being sociable and amicable and friendly with the people that are around you. So when you go into an interview environment and you talk with somebody who's, maybe has some judgments about you, right or wrong, they might, whatever the case may be, you can sit and talk with them. And as you talk with them and you're having a conversation just like we're having here,
Yeah.
the person on the other end of the table is not going to think, well, I don't know how they can do this. They're going to think, well, hey, I kind of like having this conversation with this person. They're really good at, we're having a conversation just like I would normally expect.
Or maybe the person doing the interview would be like, this is interesting. I want to see how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can drum up some interest just by being an interesting person, I guess is the way of phrasing that.
Yeah, definitely would encourage mock interviews.
Yes.
Like practice because you don't want to just wing it. I mean, some people work well that way. Sometimes I do, but it's really good to get a good list of questions and kind of form like how you would explain things, like just form your thoughts, get it out there so that when you do come to an interview and you are asked those questions, you're kind of quick to it. You don't have to sit there and think as much.
Right.
So like in that, going off of that, I see a question of like, hey, I've sent out a lot of resumes, applications, and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not hearing back. So what would you say to that individual? Like, what can they do differently? Or what would you say to that individual?
I mean, I would probably say get some peer feedback.
Mm-hmm.
If you have people who are working in the type of field that you want, send them your resume. Say, hey, what, if you were a hiring manager and you were reviewing over this, can you give me any pointers? Because some people are really, really quality candidates, but they might not be the best, resume crafting is a whole thing in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Because you have all these weird algorithms that these different sites are using. So you've got to play the person and the machine in a little bit.
Yeah.
So just sending some of these out and saying like, hey, can you give me some feedback on this? And kind of getting some of that. And that's something that, when we talk about employment services, like that's something that y'all can actually really help with too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Catherine and I review resumes all the time. And I love editing. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I love editing resumes. I don't know.
Yeah, you do some real magic.
I know.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what Catherine
sincerely,
said.
it's some
I
absolute wizardry.
I love to do it.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna?
So, I mean, with that question, it begs a lot of questions from there. Are you generating your resume to fit the job description? Are you making your resume just for that job? Are you using the keywords that are inside that job description? Have you researched the company? Are you using some of the words from their missions? It does really turn into a buzzword game. And if you have a word that's a bad word to a company, you know, that throws you out completely. AI is a whole thing. I know we're all getting very familiar with it, and the reality is they're using it against you, and so you need to use a little of it when you're doing your stuff. That's not to say you need it to generate anything for you. Don't do that. That's absolutely a terrible idea. But using it to at least get some feedback and maybe changing some of your jargon to a more company jargon,
Yeah.
because they do speak a very particular way. And that is a lot where some employment services can really help you. You've got career counselors.
Yeah.
You have places like World Services for the Blind that specialize in providing education for those who are blind and visually impaired. And so use your resources. Again,
sure.
this goes back to you can't stay in your room and expect something different. If
Yeah.
you want something you've never had before, you have to do something different.
Yeah.
And that includes going outside. And making yourself uncomfortable. That fear definitely doesn't go away, even if you practice doing interviews a million times.
I know.
That fear will never go away from you, but how you conquer that fear and how you work through that fear, that's what changes.
The more and more you do that, the
Yeah.
easier it does.
It does, yeah.
Because you're right, it never. I have severe social anxiety. It will never go away.
Yeah.
But and like Brian said, the more I get out, engage, connect, work with people, it gets easier and easier to do that.
It's just a muscle, just like anything else. You know, the more you exercise those skills and abilities, the easier it gets. And interviewing in terms of mock interviews is much the same way. You can, I mean, you know, you can get better at doing interviews. You can get better at doing that just as you can get better at, you know, better at cooking or any other skill. It's a
Yes.
skill that can be developed. It's not a, well, I'm not good at this and that's all there is. Like, no, you can improve on that stuff. This is, you know, if you're having bad luck with interviews, or if you're having bad luck with the application process, like don't be you know, fatalist about the whole process. Like, oh, I can't ever improve. No, that is the
Yeah.
absolute wrong mindset.
Yeah. I will say we've got, I know we had said around 30:20, we might open for Q&A, but it
Sure,
is
yeah.
30:17, so we got 3 minutes. I know there
I'd
is,
like to ask,
Yeah.
so is there any type of mentorship either in your life in the past or in current that you feel has been fulfilling to you in your current success?
Mhm.
As far as being visually impaired,
Well, honestly, I'd say anything. I think that's part of the journey as well.
well, I mean, other than my father who has stuck
Yeah.
with me through thick and thin
Mhm.
from birth up until now, and I'm blessed that he's still here with me. Honestly, I would have to say it would be the faculty at World Services for the Blind.
Yeah.
Because I was a mess when I come here. And they didn't tell me how to do this. They just showed me what statistics show that works. And then when I got to the point where I agreed to follow their plan, everything just worked like clockwork. And even after I left World Service for the Blind, they weren't just done with me, which is a common concept. As long as I stayed connected with them, they followed. Y'all have followed me in this 3-year journey I'm in on. And every time I've come here, I've been accepted. I've had help when I needed help. So definitely the staff at World Services for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, just a good practice overall is just to find people that you can not only mentor from, but mentor to. You know, that it's kind of like, you know, the people who help you up the ladder, you know, your role is then to turn around and help somebody else up along that as well. So, you know, I've been blessed in terms of that I've had people who have, you know, taught me lessons, or, you know, whether that's family, whether that's people here at World Services, whether that's just, you know, colleagues that I've met through my professional, you know, employment opportunities. But then there's also been those times where it's like, well, I've got an opportunity where I can then turn around and, you know, help others forward where that's been the case for me. So I think, and that kind of goes back to that community piece. I think just looking for those ways to where, you know, you can you know, share your knowledge and expertise with someone, and then find those people that you can surround yourself with, who you can then learn from and ask questions. Kind of, you know, we were talking about asking about resume stuff. You know, hey, I'm not getting a whole lot of bites on this. Can you give me some feedback on my resume? Can you give me some feedback on, hey, would you mind doing some mock interviews with me? You know, people that you can do that with, you learn from, develop skills for, all that stuff.
That's why because we haven't gone over the mentorship program yet, and I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about that before we go into Q&A. That's kind of why, you know, we at WSB implemented this mentorship program. So yes, like we have, you know, are in the beginning works of this and like getting everything together, but you have, we have a mentorship program available to our clients that are in a vocational training program. So they would be the mentee. So in that way, like Brian was saying, he wants to give back, like people outside of WSB, their way to help kind of bridge some gaps is giving back and investing into blind and visually impaired, you know, community.
That next round of workers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're hoping to see here, is that you know, reaching out to people who are who have a passion to give back and help and invest and take the time to, like we said, invest in those clients. So helping with those interviews, job searches, applications, resumes, all types of things, and more, right? Just being a good network, a good support system in a way. So that's kind of what we created here. And you can find a lot of that information on our website. If you're interested in being a mentor, you can find that on our website. And I'm sure Amelia, I think it's up and live.
Yes.
So yes, you can find more about that. As far as becoming a mentee, that's again kind of strictly to designated for our clients who are here at WSB or online. A client of ours that's in a vocational program. So yeah, that's what our mentorship program is, and for employers or anyone who's watching that is like, oh, this is very interesting, and y'all want to kind of replicate that, we encourage that because we think it's going to be very beneficial for our clients who are seeking employment and wanting to move forward after WSB.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Maddie. That's so awesome. Amelia, do we have some time for questions?
Yeah. So while we wait for people to put some questions in the chat, I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions that we already had from registration that I feel like maybe we could flesh out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So this one is from maybe from a counselor who's asking, how do we as counselors advocate for our clients to employers without being overbearing?
Who wants to take that one?
Brian.
All right. Well, so the question is, how do I advocate for, you know, my clients without being overbearing? And I think maybe, you know, speaking off the cuff here, I think I've been kind of turn that on its head, in that, you know, maybe instead of advocating on behalf of our clients, that I think maybe, you know, priority one should be, how am I going to help my client advocate for themselves?
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with being an advocate and a support system and a go-getter for your clients. But I think, you know, the first step of that is being like, okay, can you do this for yourself? Because I, the counselor, might not always be here to make this happen for you.
Yes.
And so, you know, if I'm not a counselor, not my line of work. However, if I was magically transplanted into that spot today, you know, with all of my experience that I have right now, I think a lot of that would be, well, I want you to kind of show me where you want to go, and I'm going to be behind you, and I'm going to help, you know, drive this. But you're going to be pushing, you know, picking the directions. Where are we going here?
Yeah.
I might give you leads. I might help be your GPS, but you're going to be the one to put the you know, actually hit the gas pedal here.
Yes. Yeah. The goal is independence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to drive for.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not going to sit back and do nothing, but I'm also not going to, you know, like, there is a balance there where it's like, you need to do this, but I'm here to also provide the torque behind this initiative, essentially.
Okay. Because that's what we do. That's what Catherine and I do here at WSB. I mean, that's what we're teaching our clients to maintain like sustainable independence.
Right.
And we don't always have the to do it for you. Like we want, like you know, we were saying, like you found, like you can do this, like you discovered that, like I can do this and I can advocate for myself. And you have seen that in your work, you know, with
Yes,
your
ma'am.
website, trying to get that accessible for you. You've seen that in your line of work. And no one did that for you.
And it is a learning experience, but it does get easier the more and more I do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Great answer, you guys. We have another question that I think would be good just from our registered questions. So, when it comes to working remotely, what accommodations are possible and reasonable?
When it comes to remote work, honestly, the workspace, it has to be the same as if you're working in an office. So all that same accessibility with screen readers and, you know, all those little fun tools that we use, magnifiers, would need to be at home as well. You'd have to copy it. What I want to say about remote work is that it is a wonderful thing. There are a lot of companies who they don't have a building at all. They save a bunch of money and they absolutely love it. And there's a lot more companies that hate it. And those options are going away. If anything, I don't think a lot of entry level positions would be available for remote work. And so it's to say that, you know, it's not possible. Lots of people work from home. There are a plethora of positions for that. Just how sustainable that is and how much you want to bank on that, I think might get a little tricky. Brian and Rob, y'all had some thoughts on this earlier. If you want to share a little bit about remote work. So I know transportation can be a really big barrier. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, on transportation and just remote work, trying to think. All I can say is I've witnessed somebody with visual impairment, my wife, working remotely, and as long as she had all the accessibility she needs, she's not a JAWS user. She uses Zoom text. Yeah, she uses Zoom text. She had her CCTV in her office. We built her a little office in the house, and she performed her everyday work there, and she was serious about that. Let me tell you, I'm not trying not to get sidetracked, but if she's working, I'm not walking that room.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she is on point.
I had
with her
those same
job
kind of
at the
boundaries when I was working from home.
boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
From this time to that time, because I've done both. I worked in the office and I worked remote, and there are pros and cons to both. I think that if somebody out there, if they're hard for one or the other, like, well, I'm not going to do remote or I'm not going to do in person, I would encourage that person to maybe kind of think of them both. I know for a lot of people, transportation is a big barrier, and so like, well, I want something that's remote. And if transportation can be overcome, if it's maybe a little inconvenient, you know, I would encourage maybe, exploring those options and seeing what's out there, because there are a lot of benefits that are from in person. There are benefits that are remote. It's not this one is inherently better than the other. And it really depends on the person too, because, structure and discipline and, being diligent with, like I said, like with your wife, she's like, this is my work time. You have to have that same start and end time. You have to be diligent with you managing your distractions and your routine and your schedule, and having some sense of that, because there's a lot to be said about routines and habits and rituals that we go through, and building that structure for yourself, even if you're in a, cool, this is my home office and it's just my kitchen table.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective, Ryan and Rob. Thank you so much for that. Something I want to also say too is this is a point Brian kind of mentioned, was that that transportation being a huge barrier. Looking at where you're living, there might be spaces for you to talk to your city. There might be spaces for you to talk to your state about having more accessible transportation. If you don't feel like that is something you can do, really look into what places actually give you independence. Mm-hmm. If you're not able to leave the spot you're in, that's not very independent. And so really look for those spaces you can be into. And if not, try to see where you can make them, because it's possible.
Yeah. I was just going to add, like, definitely with remote work or just online training in general, you have to be aware of like your strengths and your weaknesses, and also just like self-aware in general. and how your learning style works. Some people just may say, oh, I really want online because maybe they're uncomfortable about stepping outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, your learning style or your motivation or whatever that is may not align with what online work is, and you may not be as successful in that kind of setting. So you really have to know yourself, know your strengths, and see if that is something that really is what's better for you, or if an in-person position is just better for how you learn or how you work, or yeah, I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is you gotta be disciplined.
Yeah, very disciplined. Yes, I agree with that.
Great answers, everybody. Thank you. So we're here at 3:30. I will give you one last question before we wrap up that I think might address. So we do have someone who recently lost their job in the chat, and I think that this would probably just go well with kind of what they're wanting to know and what maybe several people are wanting to know. How can we best frame the conversation around reasonable accommodations, not as a burden, but as an investment in productivity that benefits the entire team?
Oh, that's a great question.
I can, when we go on this.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, this is from experience. As far as getting the accommodations that we need in the work setting, there is a way to present that. Now, for me, what I did was I would research the piece of equipment I'm needing, and then I would also research the pros and cons of it, and then I would come up with documentation showing on how, if I had this piece of equipment, how it could help me in the work setting, if I would be more proficient or less proficient, how much time it would save, how much money it would save. But there's a way to ask for it. And as blind, visually impaired persons, we are afforded accommodations, but I do not go in there, what's the word I'm looking for? Demanding the accommodations. I go in there and I ask for them and I present. That's what I do. I don't even ask. I present the accommodations that I need. And my results have been very beneficial by doing it that way.
Yeah, you're turning that process into a collaborative one, because, like under the ADA session, you are entitled to these reasonable accommodations. But, we were talking a little bit before we, turned the cameras and everything on. And that is, you're entitled to those. However, if step one is to walk in and say, I'm going to need this and this and this, and I'm entitled to those, you'll give them to me right now. Like, sure, you can do that and you would not be wrong. However, what is the old saying? Like, honey can often make things happen where salt and vinegar can't, or whatever. I'm butchering that saying, but just going back to the interview process, make it a conversation, talk to people. Like Rob, what Rob is saying, if you can say, hey, look, I know that I'm doing this and X, Y, and Z in my job. However, there's a lot of things that I could be doing better or more productively. If I was to have this technology or this accommodation, there's a lot of things that I could really be benefiting the team, and I could be, contributing here, here, and here, and make that case. And that's kind of your step one, because unless the person on the other end of the table is just plugging their ears and not listening to you, they're going to hear that and say, well, this seems like a worthwhile investment. I'm gonna help my employee grow, because this is something that for the pocketbook of a business, in a lot of cases, it's not that steep of a cost to set some of these things up. But then the dividends that can come out of that are pretty substantial, especially as Rob, as you said, you do the hard work for them on showing them what that dividend can be.
For sure.
Right. And back to the employer side of it, they don't have the time to sit there and look into what piece of equipment I'm needing to research it and everything. If I have, like Brian just said, if I have all the work done for them, they're going to be more inclined to say yes instead of no.
Here's your justification.
Yeah.
Here's all the research. I just need you to sign here, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as y'all saying, like almost having a portfolio with you,
Mm-hmm.
of your data, of your documentation. I think cover letters are also a very wonderful space where you can, even if it doesn't have a slot for a cover letter, you can always attach that to your resume to describe, who you are and what you can do, because they have no clue. very least interesting thing about you is the only thing that they're gonna see. And so you need to show them all the wonderful, actually interesting things about you before you get to the room. For sure.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I think that will wrap us up. If you're in the chat and you didn't get an opportunity to either get your question answered or didn't get an opportunity to ask a question, or you think of it later, you'll be reached out to by me. I'll be emailing out and we will stay in contact. You'll not only receive access to this recording, but also some contact information for people you can ask more specific questions to. And if you're interested in that mentorship program, Maddie and Catherine, those are your girls, and we'll give you plenty of information on that. And thank you, everybody, so much for coming. And I do believe we'll probably have some follow-up webinars on more specific fields of employment and stuff like that. So if you're interested in further webinars, just know this will be the last one about employment. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
You eat.